For now, let us focus on Alice. As Alice lay in her bed, silently dreaming, a sudden loud scream pierced through the Liddell residence, waking even the insects from their slumbers. David, being the first to hear the scream, nearly fell out of his bed in his frantic hurry to get to the source of the frightening scream, Alice's room. When he opened the door to his daughter's room, he scanned not for Alice, but for the source of her terror. And when he looked to her, she merely pointed a single trembling finger towards the closet door. David followed that finger to the now wide-open closet door, only to stop dead in his tracks upon doing so. There, in the dark shadows that encased the room, stood a figure with glowing eyes and a large top hat. The figure held a solitary finger to his lips, as if to shush them both, and said,
"Trickery-dock and trickery-dee. You cannot get away from me. I'm in your head, in your heart, and your mind I will slowly tear apart. The girl knows true what I can do, and soon you will know too. But for now, sweet Alice, sleep so tight, for shadows dance throughout the night. Be not afraid, though I gave you quite the fright, for there be not a worry for you tonight. And you, dear David, with eyes so wide, speak not a word, and in you I will confide, that all is well, oh so well. So to you, dear David, I will now tell of things you can't even imagine, things normality cannot reach. But for now, I'm afraid all I've done is preach. You too, one day, will understand that which is not explained. For in explanation, madness is at hand, sweet, delicious madness. A treat so right for you to taste this night. You can try all you want, and with all your puny might. But it is futile, so futile, to try and fight. That, my dear David, is why we exist outside of normality, outside of the ordinary, and outside of safety. For to us, a joke is as humanity. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time runs down on reality's clock. Soon you will face your fears. Fears abound in 6 years. Time goes fast, so do take haste, and don't let your precious time go to waste. Farewell, dear David, and Alice so sweet. I will be back, but that you already know. The thought alone fills me with such glee.
David!
Screamed Janice. How long had she been standing there?
What?
Replied the startled father.
I asked you what the hell happened. Why did Alice scream?
The Hatter, Mum. The Hatter was here, and he was going to hurt me. Father, you saw him, didn't you?
Alice, there's nobody here. It was only a bad dream, sweetheart. Now, go back to bed,
said Alice's mother. And with that, she left the room, her husband following shortly after. As he reached the door, his daughter called him from her bed.
Father, you saw him too, didn't you?
Pleaded his child. David was silent for a moment before he spoke.
Your mother is right, Alice. Go back to sleep.
But father!
Alice refuted.
No buts, Alice. I'm going to get you to see Dr. Richards in the morning. Back to bed now.
David walked back to his own room, feeling an avalanche of emotions pour over him. Guilt for lying to his own child and wife. Confusion over what the fuck had just happened. But most of all, fear. Fear for his daughter and his wife, for himself. Fear of the Hatter. Whatever he was, David felt an unyielding knot in his stomach whenever he even thought of the strange man. At least, that's what he thought he was. After everything that had transpired that day, however, there were now many things that David was left unsure of.
I am not crazy.
Thought David.
Alice saw them too.
David kept replaying the confrontation over and over again in his head, contemplating whether or not the whole ordeal had happened or if it was all some weird hallucination. David went through everything he could think of to explain away what he had seen, but much to his growing disappointment, his mind could do little if anything to pacify his concerned brain. At that particular moment, it seemed as if the world had been tipped upside down and then thrown into a whirlwind, around and around and around and around and around. His thoughts would go. Where they stopped, nobody could know. Though even if David could know, he would still not know where to go when he knew. Poor, poor David. Back to Alice. She did not fall back into dreamland that night, nor did David. Both of them were too on edge from the traumatic experience, with what appeared to be not just an imaginary friend. No, it was clear that something about the fact that both of them could see the Hatter had to mean something. Poor Alice couldn't help but dart her eyes all about the small pink room, over and over and over and over and over, and again and again and again and again. It just didn't add up to Alice as to why her father had lied about seeing the Hatter.
He doesn't believe me. He doesn't even believe himself.
Suddenly, Alice found herself slowly pulling off her sheets and comforter, before slowly leaving her bed, her bare feet landing softly on the cool hardwood floorboards beneath her. More thoughts began to zoom through Alice's mind.
Maybe Father was right. But then, why did he look right at the Hatter? Why didn't he tell Mother? Can Father see them? The creatures from... Where do they come from? A nightmare, perhaps? No, all things hail from a distant land, or at least a land of sorts. I wonder what land could be so strange, a land surely full of wonders, albeit dark ones. Wonderland.
Alice said aloud. And as if by magic command, Alice watched as her closet doors opened wide and a thick red fog burst forth. Through the door, Alice could see nothing, yet she found herself walking slowly towards the strange fog. It was strange, really. Why on earth would she go in the direction of a mysterious fog that just appeared from nowhere? Why would she even think of going into something of the sort? It was a very weird, no, not weird, absolutely mad. It was an absolutely mad idea to follow, but an idea that she herself had not thought of. No, it was as if she did not have control of her own mind and body. She tried in vain to resist as she inched ever closer to the fog. She did not walk, but instead hovered across the ground at the touch of the cool mist at her ankles. Before more questions could enter her mind, she found herself inside the closet, only snapping out of her trance-like state when she heard the sound of the two doors shutting in unison behind her. Somehow, she had ended up inside the closet, but looking around her, she quickly realized that she was definitely not in her closet. In fact, Alice could not so much as see her hand in front of her face. The strange fog had all but vanished, leaving only Alice, an endless sea of blackness, and a silence so piercing that it unsettled the small girl. No sooner could Alice think of where she was, than did two eyes of bright amber appear from out of the void. They were bright, and they illuminated the very space around her. The eyes did not move, only stared deep into Alice's eyes, as if they sought to break into her very soul. Alice stood there, staring back into the eyes with confusion rather than fear on her mind and expression. By all means, the girl should have been terrified, but she just stood there, eyes fixed on the pair of glowing orbs before her. Alice, after several minutes of this, finally broke the silence.
Who are you? Where am I?
She asked, a slight hint of curiosity dancing on her words. As the figure hovered there, a row of gleaming razors appeared from under the eyes. A long, menacing chuckle erupted, filling Alice finally with the terror that she had until now all but forgotten.
Dear, dear, sweet Alice, how long have we waited? I am the Cheshire Cat. You, of course, have already become acquainted with the Hatter, I presume?
Asked the creature.
I don't like him. He wants to hurt me. You all do. Go away. Go away.
Whined Alice in fear as she put her small hands over her eyes, but for what reason, she knew not. Oh, my. You have it all wrong, sweet child. Chirped a voice that Alice recognized. From the void of black emerged the Hatter. Only he didn't look menacing. His hat was bright now, with vibrant colors flashing all around his head. His eyes were no longer red, but an inviting shade of baby blue. Laced upon his wrists were fine white silk gloves that looked to be that of an English gentleman's attire. In his right hand he held a small teacup with a floral pattern painted on the edges. In his left hand he held a small bottle. The Hatter drank some, then the cat did the same, and finally the small bottle rolled to rest at Alice's small feet. She tentatively picked it up, reading a tag on the cap that caught her eye. The tag simply read, "Drink me." Alice looked over the contents of the bottle. A liquid that emitted a neon rainbow swirled furiously within the container. Alice looked to the Hatter, who simply replied, "Drink, and you shall understand." Alice hesitantly popped the lid off the bottle and slowly brought it to her nose. The liquid smelled fantastic, as if all of Alice's favorite scents had all been combined into a concoction of sweet and savory bliss. Alice drank a small swig of the drink, tasting like a blend of strawberries and lemon tea. As strange as the taste was to Alice, she found that she rather enjoyed it, and before she knew it, the bottle rested empty in her hands. Alice looked to the Hatter, who simply smiled warmly at her. Alice noticed that a door now sat behind the Hatter. The door was magnificent, adorned with various colors and patterns, almost like it was something straight out of a fantasy book. The Hatter took the key from his left hand and unlocked the large door. Immediately a flood of light shot through the sea of black. Alice was awestruck, as just moments before they had seemed so menacing, but now they seemed so inviting and sincere. The Hatter beckoned for Alice to step through the door, bowing at the waist and removing his hat before saying, "Ladies first, my dear."
Where does it lead?
The still hesitant girl asked. The Hatter, sensing her reluctance, put his long arm across Alice's shoulder and excitedly announced, "To a place where dreams become reality, where all your troubles just melt away. To a land of wonder. Wonderland. Your Wonderland, Alice."
It's mine? A wonderland? All for me?
She said with wonderment apparent on her face. "That's right, my dear, all for you. Every flower, every cloud, everything you can imagine and more is yours to enjoy," he said while flashing her another happy smile. Alice looked at the Hatter, then to the Cheshire Cat, who now had eyes of a beautiful purple color. And rather than the menacing grin from before, his smile too had become happy. Almost like Alice had met the complete opposites of the creatures from before. Alice then turned to the door, pondering just what Wonderland had in store for her. In the end, as was custom with Alice, curiosity won out over reasoning, as she stepped through the massive doorway and into the blinding light of Wonderland.